I've got a Liberal Party Senator for New South Wales, one Hollie Hughes, on the line right now. Do we say Merry Christmas to each other? We should, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. It is coming right to the end of the work year and Christmas is upon us. So
Merry
Merry
Christmas to
Christmas to
you and
you and to
yours.
everyone.
Yeah, fantastic. Does it feel like Christmas to you?
It feels like the end of a very long year is what it feels like. I don't know whether, it's starting. I mean, I've had the tree up for a while. I do
Yeah,
enjoy Christmas. So,
yeah,
but I got myself pretty organised because I knew we were sitting quite late into the year and there was, I'm still going up until next week, until the end of next week. So a lot of my shopping's done, but I
Oh,
think
good.
I think I'll have more of a panic come 23rd, 24th before I have 18 adults descend on my house.
Oh, that will be fun. Look, it's interesting. What is it? Monday, Christmas Day is Monday. That
Mm.
gives people that really good period over the weekend to catch up and do last minute stuff, which sometimes we don't have the chance to do. You know, if it's a Thursday or a Wednesday, we kind of
Mm. I
work
can
out.
tell you though, I went via QVB today. I had to go and pick up a few staff Christmas presents on my
Yeah,
way into the office, and it is busy out there.
right.
So don't wait, because I have a feeling, as we know, these crowds always seem to increase the closer we get to Christmas. And if you're like me and want to just get in, get out, it's not ideal at the
Yeah,
moment already.
yeah. Okay.
Mm.
We'll heed that advice. Now, I keep hearing the Treasurer of Australia report on the economy. I keep hearing him talk about what the Labor government intends to do. But he's terribly short on actually doing stuff, as most Australians know, because they've done bugger all about inflation. He's now saying, oh, it's about modernisation. It's about maximisation, whatever that is.
Mm.
It's about Middle Australia. Well, he had to mention Middle Australia because he's not in the good books with Middle Australia, is he?
Well, what this government has managed to do is, in within 18 months, they've fundamentally created a working poor in Australia. And
Mm.
certainly in my lifetime, I've never seen it at a situation like this, where people are in well-paying full-time jobs, quite often two parents in a family. But because of this government's actions, the average family is having to find an extra $25,000 a year when it comes to mortgage repayments. That is $25,000 a year after tax.
Mm.
Now, if you're a policeman and a nurse or a teacher and a paramedic, where do you find that money? It's not an easy task for anyone. And so this government has actually managed to generate a working poor. So I think he's sort of mischaracterising what Middle Australia is looking like. I find it difficult to reconcile when he talks about modernisation, when he's got Chris Bowen over there saying it's the end of fossil fuels and we're a resource-rich nation. Like, everything they're doing is cutting our economy. It's removing industry from Australia, the safeguard mechanism, all the work that they're doing in these sort of what they call emissions reductions, whilst we're seeing emissions actually increase under them. But everything they're doing is making it harder for business to stay onshore,
Yeah.
for Australian jobs to stay here. So if he means by modernising our economy sending us back to the dark ages, well, that's one way to look at it. But it's certainly not going to be a future filled with mining, the resources sector, with manufacturing or heavy industry if Chris Bowen, who is still a part of this government, gets his way.
Yeah, you're right there. The government's migration plan, however, has some redeeming points. Some of which I've got to say have been copied from your boss, opposition leader
Mm-hmm.
Peter Dutton. But halving migration is a good start, right?
Yeah. Oh, look, absolutely. But the thing about Labor is they never know how to manage a migration program. When the coalition's in, we like to run a very targeted migration program. So you get skilled workers and have visa conditions that mean that they have to be based in rural and regional areas, that they have to go to the areas where those jobs exist and the workers need to go and fill them. Yet again, we see a very haphazard way of them approaching this. I find it extraordinary as well that they've announced this starting on Saturday after the Parliament rose Thursday night, Claire O'Neill has had this report, has had this review since April. So April through to December, they had nothing to say about it. And, all of a sudden they've got a lot to say. And I mean, Chris, you know what it's like at this time of year. Are people still listening? Are people still really engaging?
No.
I don't know about you, but my diary is just packed full with different events and out at different sort of Christmas lunches, Christmas dinners, Christmas drinks, and as well as trying to figure out how you're going to cook dinner for 18 people on Christmas Day and have all the presents for the kids and get yourself packed and in the car ready to go away straight after. There's all of that stuff going on. So people's engagement tends to be less at this point in time. And if you're a family who's had to find that $25,000 to keep the roof over your head, this is a tight Christmas. And, are you sitting around listening to these guys who are talking about things in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years that, have more people coming in, putting more pressure on the housing situation? We've heard construction come out today and say that where they've been classified is only going to add to the housing crisis because we've still got a lot of people that have arrived here, a lot of people still coming, and now we haven't prioritised getting those in the construction sector here that can actually build that housing that we need. So
good point. Good point. We've spoken previously about the detainee debacle and the fact that the government wasn't prepared for what came out of the High Court. And when they did act, they acted contrary to what the High Court said. And then they wouldn't apologise for the acts of crime that were committed by these detainees. And then they did apologise. So it was a complete chaos. Well, this almost developed again in reference to a high-risk terror offender by the name of Ibrahim Ghazawi. This is an exclusive story in The Australian today. Now, he has refused to renounce violence in all contexts. This guy is a complete and utter danger to everyone. He was quietly released from the Hunter Correctional Facility on Saturday after serving an 8-year sentence. He's previously committed violent jihad. He's plotted to form an army at the bottom of the Blue Mountains to attack the AFP headquarters. Government lawyers turned up at the 11th hour to apply a supervision order on him just before his sentence expired. As your Liberal colleague Michaelia Cash said, the incompetence of this government around matters of national security and safety of Australians knows no bounds. This is Claire O'Neill's portfolio. She's up for it.
It's actually the Attorney General's portfolio.
Well, they're both not
Claire
up to
O'Neill's. Yeah, but I mean, this is actually the Attorney General, and we saw that outburst by Mark Dreyfus towards journalists last week that it was an absurd question. Don't interrupt. I mean, the arrogance is just breathtaking. So the Attorney General is responsible here, and we were asking questions in the Senate about Ghazawi last week. So they have not been on top of this issue. We don't know whether they're on top of any other issue because there are detainees that are coming to the end of a full sentence or prisoners who are Australian citizens that will be released. This isn't a case of, I think my understanding is Ghazawi is actually an Australian. He was born here. So we don't have the option of being able to just deport him. So this is actually a matter of law. It's a matter for the Attorney General and he should have been on top of the game. And yet, so I can just imagine his performance in a press conference if a young female journalist asked him a question now, whether he'd have a rant there. But this is actually the Attorney General's purview. They were not up to the task. They have not been across their brief. And the security of Australians is what is being put at risk time and time again because of their incompetence.
Thank you, Ken from Arizona. Ken says, I was looking forward to hearing Steve Kirsch. Have you had Philip Altman or Senator Rennick on? I've had both Altman and Rennick on, Ken, but that was in the first half of the year. We're almost expired for 2023. How about I put in a request for early in the new year for you? Thank you very much for your very, very kind email. I will leave it on my diary system here so I can remind myself to do exactly that when I'm finished. Let's get back to New South Wales Liberal Party Senator Hollie Hughes. So the Labor power brokers have wasted no time replacing Anastasia Palaszczuk in Queensland. The very unlikable and often nasty Stephen Miles will be the Premier. He'll be ably assisted by the more conducive Cameron Dick. I would have thought if Cameron Dick had got there, they stood a really good chance of winning. I think Stephen Miles is there for the plucking, and maybe Mr. Christopher Foley, David Christopher Foley, would be rather joyful today.
I would have thought this was an early Christmas present for David Crisafulli, them putting Stephen Miles up, particularly because he is so closely associated with the absolute draconian measures that Queensland adopted during the COVID period.
Yes.
And no one is ever going to forget Anastasia getting up and saying Queensland hospitals are for Queenslanders, followed by stories of a mother who lost a baby and wasn't allowed to travel over the border to a Queensland hospital to be with it. Just inhumane activities that occurred under both his watch, Stephen Miles as health minister, with Palaszczuk.
Yeah.
So he is going to be a consistent and stark reminder of what COVID was like for those in Queensland, but particularly for those on those border communities. But, the fact that it's the unions that have pulled all the strings in a back room to make this happen, we are saying the federal government, they've got 32% of the primary vote. It looks like they're only governing for the 10% who belong to unions. And now it looks like Queensland in for exactly the same on a grander scale, because Stephen Miles has been handpicked, hand-plucked, put into this position by the unions and deals that have been done. So, as I said, I think it's a bit of an early Christmas present for David Crisafulli.
Bring it on. It'll be a full-blooded battle in 2024 for the Queensland Premiership. Now, two senior federal Liberal MPs have been confronted by the chair of the UN Women Australia Group over their criticism of the UN body for its 2-month silence about the murder and rape of Israeli women on October 7. The UN's Georgina Williams contacted Senator Sarah Henderson and Victorian MP Georgie Crozier to complain about what they said. They were accused of dividing women simply by turning up at a Jewish rally in support of the victims. How she works that out, I got no idea. But it does show you what a weird, woke and woeful bubble these lefties in the UN live in, Hollie.
Oh, look, I know Sarah Henderson and I have talked over the years of believe all women, it's all women in the sisterhood, but not conservative women. Conservative women never get included in that. And whenever there's an attack or something that happens against a conservative woman, we hear from the feminazis, they deserve it because they're conservative, and the things that I've been called over the years is, I think I was a handmaiden at one stage or something. I had to look up what it meant,
It's almost nice.
Well, yeah, let me tell you, the intent behind it is not. But this is just completely unsurprising. It just now sees Jewish women being included in the anti-sisterhood group, those that form part of this left-wing woke movement that purport to be for all women are not for all women. They're not for conservative women. They're not for Jewish women. I think the UN is, I have no time for the organisation pretty much, and their left-wing woke agenda that they push. We know that the schools that are run by the UN in Gaza have a very anti-Israel and anti-Jewish curriculum. So this is just a continuation. Their silence over the rape and murder of Jewish girls and women is unfortunately, I just think, par for the course. But the fact that this woman had the gall to call up Senator Henderson and Georgie Crozier from the state parliament and berate them, I have no doubt Sarah gave her what for.
But I bet she did.
I just think it's disgusting. I wish I was a fly on the wall for that conversation. But, they did take 2 months to acknowledge that there had been the rape and murder of dozens of Israeli women and Jewish girls. And their silence is absolutely defining of what they truly believe.
It didn't fit with what they think of Israel. Here's one from Alex on the chat box. It says, I've had to go back to my audio stream listening to TNT radio, but I'm 30,000 feet in the sky. He's just left San Francisco, Alex has. I'm enjoying TNT Radio.live. It can be enjoyed and experienced anywhere. Also, great to hear Hollie Hughes and Chris Smith discussing massively important issues. There you go. You're being heard a long way away.
Excellent.
Yeah. Last one. This is like a postscript to the voice referendum. I haven't spoken about The Voice for about 2 months now. It's been joyful. Former Indigenous Affairs Minister Ken Wyatt says the Voice referendum question, it should have been split. Now, I'll explain that for everyone who may not understand it. Split in terms of voting for a voice, that is a panel with direct access to the executive of government, and then split in terms of the other question, which should have been separated, which was, do you want Indigenous people included in the Constitution? They were too arrogant to split it. They were trying to be too smart by half, Hollie.
And Ken Wyatt was particularly nasty and abusive to his former Liberal colleagues in regards to the fact that they wouldn't support the question that was being put, and that there had been offers of negotiation to say we will support Indigenous recognition in the preamble of the Constitution. You will get bipartisan support. And they didn't want that. They thought they could push through with this absolute zealotry of changing the way this country is structured via the Constitution, which Australians rightly and resoundingly said no to. Every single state voted no. The only anomaly in the country, and I think everyone would understand this, is the Canberra bureaucratic bubble, which just shows how directly out of touch they are with the rest of Australia, because everywhere else was around 60 to 40, 60% no, and stronger in some states like South Australia and Queensland. It is absolutely ridiculous for Ken Wyatt to be coming out and saying this. But what I will say is thanks, Ken, because I think you've gone off script. If you notice, you haven't heard from Marshall Langton, you haven't heard from Noel Pearson, haven't even heard from the Prime Minister or Linda Burney about this, because they want everyone to forget.
Yeah.
They don't want to bring it up again. And it just shows for particularly Burney and Albanese that supporting Indigenous communities, closing the gap, working with those most vulnerable was not their priority, because at no stage since then we have put forward in the Senate a number of requests for inquiries into Indigenous organisations where money is being spent, ask for an audit, have a look at Indigenous child sexual assault in Indigenous communities. All of those inquiries have been blocked by the Labor Party with their mates, the Greens and David Pocock.
Disgraceful.
So they are absolutely disgraceful. The Voice was not about helping Indigenous communities. It was about ideologically zealots trying to change our Constitution. And the fact that Ken has come out, I would welcome him and others to continue to do so, because we need Australians to remember what this government tried to do when they get to go to the next federal poll.
Very well said. Exactly. Well stated. Love it. We will catch up earlier in the week next week because of your very, very busy Christmas schedule. But I look forward to that. Thank you very much for your time today.
See you, Smithy. Have a good week.
Good on you. Thank you very much for that. The New South Wales Liberal Party Senator, Hollie Hughes, who we love having on the program. And Hollie gets great feedback from all of you, whether it's on emails or social media or on our chat box as well.